This is Henry Simon, bringing you another story from my files here at the Missing Persons Bureau.
In these stories of the Missing Persons Bureau, dramatized for Henry Simon by Ross Napier, names and addresses have, for obvious reasons, been changed. In one moment, the search for Julian Frost. Address unknown. And here again is Henry Simon.
His name was Julian Frost, but most people in the neighborhood referred to him simply as the Old Soldier, a title which was apt as it was affectionate, for Julian had seen service in both the Boer War and the Kaiser's War. In the latter, thrice decorated, he had been given his commission, and his proudest possession was the old uniform which he'd first worn late in 1916 as Second Lieutenant Frost, DCM, DSM and Bar. In 1952, it was still to be found in his cupboard in mothballs and just a little frayed at the edges, but still as handsome as ever. The same uniform of glory which had graced the battlefields of France over 3 decades before. At the age of 73, well in retirement, although still active, the old soldier lived with his son and daughter-in-law in their Wandsworth home, where he spent his days pottering in the garden and a good part of his evenings relating the details of various World War exploits to his 10-year-old grandson, Philip, who loved nothing more than to sit by the hour, just listening to the old man's tales of valor and gore.
And there we were, cut off on all sides with our retreat blocked and the German lines directly ahead. Now, to advance meant certain death. To fall back also meant death. And to stay where we were meant a fate even worse. Capture by the enemy.
Gosh! So what did you do?
There was only one course open to us. We had to go underground.
Underground?
At the risk of burying ourselves alive. Let me see now. I need a pencil and paper to show you exactly what our position was and the location of our own and the German line.
Oh, here's a pencil. You can use the back of my exercise book to draw on.
Isn't this one of your school books?
Oh, it doesn't matter. I can rub it out again tomorrow after I've shown the chaps.
Shown the chaps?
At school. Well, they all know about you. What a hero you were. How you won your medals.
Well, now, I wouldn't go so far as to say I was a hero. I was just one of many thousands of men serving my country as best I could.
They didn't get all the medals like you did.
Oh, perhaps not. But the most courageous deeds often went unnoticed. Like the time little Sandy McLaughlin captured that machine gun post single-handed. I believe I told you the story that...
What's going on here?
Oh, it's all right, Dad. Grandpa's just telling me a story.
I'll bet he is.
You met Sandy McLaughlin, son. We spent Christmas with him up at the lakes once. You were only a boy then, not much older than Philip here. Seems like yesterday we hired that long...
I'm sorry, Dad. It's a little late for reminiscing. We've got to get to bed. Come along, old chap.
Oh, gosh. Can I stay up just a little longer?
Not tonight. Your mother's waiting for you in the bathroom. You run along now. I'll drop in and say good night in a few minutes.
You always get interrupted at the most exciting spots. Night, Grandpa.
Night, my boy. Sleep well. I'll finish the story when you come home from school tomorrow.
You won't forget now?
No, I won't forget.
Now, you hurry on, Phil. Your mother's waiting.
I'm going. Night.
Close the door after you. I want to have a little chat with Grandpa.
There's a fine lad, that. Great credit to you and Jenny.
And you're his ideal. I suppose you realize that.
I like to think he respects me.
Now, respecting you's one thing. Worshipping you is another.
Worshipping?
That's what I said. He looks on you as a sort of a combination of Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar with the Galahad at King Arthur's court thrown in for good measure.
Oh, my dear boy, aren't you exaggerating a trifle?
No, Dad, I'm not. To the contrary, if anything. You've filled his head so full of blood and thunder notion that he's beginning to gather a rather warped set of values. To him, war's something noble and grand, a series of gallant acts spliced with good fellowship and fun, and that's not so, Dad, and you know it. You know it better than most. I fought in the last one. You took part in the two before that. And we both saw more than our fair share of tragedy and suffering. Oh, I've done all I can to erase wartime activities from my mind, but you seem determined to relive yours over and over again, to thrust them on Philip. Give him ideas of becoming a soldier himself so he can fight in a third world war even more bloody than his predecessors.
Oh, that's hardly fair,
Fair or not, it's the truth, Dad. I can see the effect it's having on him, even if you can't. And then Jenny, how do you think she feels about it?
Frankly, it never occurred to me
That's the whole point, Dad. It should have occurred to you. If it had, there'd be no necessity for me to speak to you like this. Believe me, it's not a job I relish.
In effect, what you're saying is that I'm a bad influence on the boy. Is that it?
Oh, no, not for a moment. Look, I'm simply trying to point out that all this war talk isn't doing him any good. Both Jenny and I feel that, well, he should be more interested in the cultural side of life.
I was under the impression he was doing well at school.
Well, so he is, but not nearly as well as he should be doing. And it's largely due to you that he's not.
I see.
Now, look, please try to understand, Dad. I don't want to...
I understand well enough.
You do see what I'm getting at, then?
Yes, I think perhaps I do.
Oh, then, I'll say no more about it. Well, he should be through in the bathroom by this. Better go in and give Jenny a hand getting him to bed.
Yes, I think I'll call it a day myself.
That's a good idea. You do look tired. Well, no hard feelings, Dad?
No hard feelings, son. Thanks for setting me straight.
Alan, are you there?
In the lounge, dear.
Honestly, that boy of yours is always so full of beans at bedtime, it's impossible to interest him in sleep. Where's Dad?
He's gone to bed.
So early? Oh, he said something about watching some show on TV at 9.
I think he's a little cut up. My pep talk knocked the stuffing out of him, rather.
Oh, I hope you weren't too hard on him.
I tried not to be.
Oh, you should have let me handle it. I'd have used a more subtle approach.
Oh, he'll get over it.
I'll go and see if he's all right.
Now, look, I wouldn't if I were you, dear. I think he'd prefer to be left alone. Any patching up that has to be done can wait till tomorrow.
Oh, I just hate to think of him being upset.
Well, no more than I do, but well, unfortunately there was no other way. He has to be made to understand that...
I suppose you're right. Seems rather brutal, even so. All he has left in his life are memories.
Memories of war and soldiering.
You have a good many yourself.
Well, let's hope I don't live to inflict them on my grandchildren.
Well, I doubt if you will. The essential difference between you and your father is a basic one. Significant of the times, perhaps. This generation is given to remembering. Yours is solely bent on trying to forget.
Come on, eat up, Phil. You'll be late for school.
I've got ages yet. What's happened to Grandpa? It's not like him to sleep in.
Oh, he'll be down presently. Your mother's gone up to call him.
I knocked on his door earlier and didn't answer.
Well, he's a pretty sound sleeper when he gets going. And now, don't you forget your milk now.
Oh, I hate milk.
It's a characteristic of young boys to hate everything that's good for them. That's why parents are invented. To see that they,
Alan, would you come outside for a moment?
What's wrong, dear?
Where's Grandpa?
You go on with your breakfast, darling. We'll be back in a second.
And just you see you don't pour that milk down the sink. Well?
Alan, he's gone.
What?
Dad, he's not in his room.
Oh, he probably went for a stroll. He often does before breakfast.
If he did, he's been out all night. His bed hasn't been slept in.
For the Missing Persons Bureau, this story had its beginning some 3 days later, when I was visited here in my office by Alan Frost and his wife. Both appeared to be under a very considerable strain, which was duly explained by the fact that the old soldier had not been seen or heard of since his room had been found empty on the previous Friday morning.
We've almost been beside ourselves with worry, Mr. Simon. Not knowing where he is, what he might be doing.
If only he'd left a message or given us some warning, but we've had absolutely no word at all.
You say he left the house sometime during the night.
We must have done. After we went to bed.
What time was that?
Around 11.
You found that he was missing at what time the following morning?
Between 8:15 and 8:30, but Phil said he knocked on his door before 7 and there was no answer.
I see. It's roughly 8 hours. Did he take much with him in the way of clothes?
His best-worn suit and his uniform.
Uniform?
The uniform he wore in the First War. He's had it in cold storage for 30-odd years, ever since he took it off in 1918.
And he's always treasured it.
And money? How was he fixed there?
Well, most of it's tied up in investments. He couldn't get his hands on it if he wanted to. Not without consulting his broker, who's a personal friend of mine. Well, even then it'd take time.
Have you been in touch with him? The broker, I mean?
Yes. He promised to let me know if Dad makes any attempt to contact him.
Was he in the habit of keeping money about the house?
Oh, up to about 10 or 15 pounds.
Derived from his investments?
Yes. The payments were made through me. I more or less manage his affairs.
I see. So at present he has no access to his income?
Not directly, no.
Has he any close friends he might have turned to?
Well, most of his friends are dead.
No other relatives?
Well, none to speak of.
And he's been retired from active business for quite a while, I think you said?
11 years.
What was his occupation?
A draftsman.
He's been living with you now for how long?
Well, since Mother died, it's going on 6 years.
Uh-huh. And his present age is 73.
He'll be 74 in July.
I see. Is he still in possession of all his faculties?
Oh, complete possession. Except for 1 or 2 eccentricities, he's as alert as ever he was.
Eccentricities?
Well, to do with his wartime escapades. As I mentioned, he has a strong tendency to live in the past.
That's a common failing amongst old soldiers.
Whoever wrote that song knew what he was talking about.
Song?
They don't die. They simply fade away.
Henry Simon returns to continue this story in just a moment. And here again is Henry Simon.
It was a touching story. One could not help feeling sympathy for the old soldier, who had presumably been so upset by his son's attitude that he'd left home, possibly intending never to return. However, by the same token, I thought and felt that Alan Frost's attitude had been an unreasonable one. He'd acted in what he considered to be the very best interests of his own son, a view which I found very difficult not to share. Accordingly, following the departure of my client, I sent for Agent Bob Hunter, with whom I discussed the various aspects of this case.
Yeah, it could be a tough one, Chief. The older they are, the trickier they are, especially when they get a good start. He could be anywhere at all by this.
Well, I wouldn't say exactly that, Hunter.
Huh?
For a start, he'd be limited by financial barriers.
No, not necessarily. For all we know, he could have had a pile sold away in his room.
He could have, but it's most unlikely that he did. Now, don't forget, his departure was an abrupt one. He'd no time at all to prepare himself for the road ahead. Whatever plans he made, if any, must be made on the spur of the moment. Apart from which, of course, the only access he had to his income was to our client, who seemed to be most definite that he must have left the house with something under £15 in his pocket. In view of that, I think we can safely assume that wherever he is, it won't be very long before he's going to be in need of cash, which he can get only from his broker or from his son. Moreover, he's very much too old to land a job, so of course we can discount any possibility of that kind.
Well, in other words, you figure all we have to do is sit tight and wait for him to contact the broker.
Indeed not. From all accounts, he's a very stubborn man as well as a proud one. He'd know if he approached his broker if his son would come to hear of it, which to my mind would undoubtedly be a confession of dependability. And at this point, I imagine that's the last thing he'd want.
Well, what does he do, starve to death?
He gets by as best he can, for as long as he can. In so doing, of course, he could very well do irreparable damage to his health, both mental and physical.
Yeah.
So that's why he has to be found, and found soon.
Now, the big question is, where do we start looking?
Well, let's see now. He left his home sometime after 11 p.m. on the Thursday evening.
Which could mean any time till 7 a.m. the following morning.
Obviously, he couldn't have called a cab from the house without risk of being overheard. And if he'd left after midnight, the train and bus services would have ceased.
Which indicates what exactly?
That either he left before midnight or after 5 o'clock in the next morning, when the services were again resumed.
Unless he spent the night on the station or somewhere similar.
Perhaps you better examine his room. See if you can unearth any leads there. Hasn't been touched since he went.
What's the address again?
Wandsworth, 17 Harpen Road. At the Frosts' home, an attractive brick dwelling in Harpen Road, Wandsworth, Hunter was greeted by Jennifer Frost, who led him upstairs to her father-in-law's room at the rear of the house. Large and airy, it was neat and well furnished. albeit for an abundance of military souvenirs which line the walls and mantel. Souvenirs which ranged from a tattered regimental flag to a polished bayonet, which hung unsheathed about a framed photograph of Lord Kitchener.
It's something of a military mausoleum, as you can see.
To each his own, I would say. That's exactly how you found it?
Exactly. Nothing's been moved or interfered with in any way.
Yeah, you said the bed hadn't been slept in.
You can see for yourself. I put fresh sheets on the day before. They're not even creased.
Some cigar butts in the ashtray. You smoke cigars, huh?
Always.
Rodriguez Provincial Red. Yeah, expensive.
Yes, it was his one extravagance. He never smoked any other brand.
Did he take his pajamas with him?
Oh, to tell you the truth, I didn't think to check. He kept them under his pillow.
No. No. Not here. I guess it... No, what's this?
His address book, is it?
Looks like it. Knew plenty of people.
Oh, he's had it for years.
There's a calendar in the front. 1919. Yeah, that's going back a bit.
Everything in this room goes back at least that far.
I wonder.
What?
Maybe he was looking up the addresses of some of his old pals.
Well, as my husband explained to Mr. Simon, most of them are dead.
Yeah, but they can't all be. I mean, there must be, 500 names here if there's a dozen. Maybe if we went through it together, we might dig up a few possibilities.
I'm afraid I'd be no help. Alan might be, though.
Where could I reach him?
At his office. He's with Gamble and O'Rourke, the textile people.
Oh, good.
If you like, I'll give him a ring. Tell him you're on your way.
Well, I don't quite follow, Mr. Hunter. What's your idea exactly?
Well, we found the book under his pillow. Now, it seems to me there's a fair possibility he consulted it before leaving. In which case, the answer we're after could be somewhere between these two covers.
You believe he may have contacted one of his old army friends?
Yeah, it's conceivable.
I can't think who he'd be. Oh, Jove, it suddenly occurs to me.
Yeah?
On the evening of his disappearance, just before I had my talk to him, he was telling Phil a story. I'm not sure what it was about, but it had to do with a chap named Sandy McLaughlin.
Sandy McLaughlin?
He and Dad went right through the post-war together. We kept in contact for quite a few years after that. Our two families spent a Christmas together up in the Lakes District. Well, I was only a youngster at the time, but I remember it very well. It must have been around about 1928-29.
Was he still alive?
Well, I wouldn't know. The other night was the first time I'd heard mention of his name in years.
Well, let's see if he's listed. McLaughlin. Look, here we are. Sandy McLaughlin, 8 Carlisle Road, Inverness.
That's right, he was Scottish. I seem to recall he had rather a broad accent. That address must be 30 years old. There's not much chance he'd still be there, even if he's alive.
Yeah, but he must have been there till your father lost touch with him. Assuming he did, that is, which, well, it couldn't have been till after your Christmas at the Lakes.
True.
In any case, if it was McLaughlin he was looking up with a view to paying him a visit, he obviously didn't know of any other address. So he could have gone there regardless.
Well, I suppose it's worth following up.
We got nothing else. What can we lose?
It was a slim chance, yet it was not without a certain solidarity of foundation. Indeed, it stood to reason that if McLaughlin had been on our quarry's mind shortly before his departure, he might very well have turned to his old friend and comrade in arms for consolation. So it was that Hunter journeyed to Inverness on the following day, arriving at his destination shortly after 4 in the afternoon. Situated in the upper northeast ridge of the Scottish coast, Inverness is famed chiefly for its proximity to the fabled Loch Ness, one of the most glorious expanses of water in the world, bordered by mountainous countryside of breathtaking beauty. Carlisle Road, some half a mile from the town centre, proved to be an impressive thoroughfare. Lined on either side by neat bungalows, it had about it an atmosphere of peace and solitude. Number 8 on the left-hand side, not very far along from Grenville Avenue, was shaded in front by a flowering shrub, which grew higher than the house itself and extended throughout the entire length of the veranda. In answer to Hunter's ring, the door was opened by a plumpish, middle-aged woman in a house dress and slippers. Her features were sharp and pronounced, as was her Highland accent.
If you've something to sell, I'm not buying, so there is an end to it.
Oh, that's okay, ma'am. I'm no salesman. Hunter's the name. I'm from London.
From London?
Yeah. I'm trying to contact the man who used to live here, name of McLaughlin.
Well, I'm Beth McLaughlin. Or would it be my husband, Jim?
Well, it could be. Was he ever known as Sandy?
Oh, no, you're thinking of Andrew, his brother.
Andrew?
Aye, Sandy to his friends. He used to live here many years ago, before the old people died. Him and his wife, Maggie. Then they moved out and we moved in, Jim and me. And that was back in 1934. We've been here ever since.
And Sandy, Andrew?
He has a wee place in Kilmarnock. We didn't see much of him these days. He's getting old and decrepit, you know. Oh, quite a handful he's become. With naught to talk about but how he won the war back in 1918.
Mm-hmm.
To hear him carry on, you'd swear the Kaiser surrendered to him personally. Oh, but he's getting popular in his dotage, it seems. The other second has been here asking for him in the past few days.
There was somebody else?
Aye. One of his old trench companions, I'll warrant. Out for a fling.
He didn't mention his name, I suppose.
Aye, he did that. What was it now? Snow?
Frost?
Aye, that was it. Frost. I know it was something to do with cold weather.
Abruptly, faint hope had become certain knowledge, and Hunter was assured that his trail was a true one. Accordingly, some 2 hours later, he boarded an express train bound for Glasgow, where he spent the night, and from whence he proceeded on the following morning on a district line to Kilmarnock, which was some 20 miles to the south. The address he'd been given was Lawton Street, number 25, which he found without any sort of difficulty. It was a stone bungalow and of ancient extraction, and it bore many signs of disrepair.
Aye.
Morning, ma'am. Would this be the home of Mr. Andrew McLaughlin?
Aye, it would be. What is it you're wanting?
Well, I'm trying to locate a man named Frost. Julian Frost. I understand
If you've come to take him away, it's a good thing.
But he's here?
Aye, he's here right enough. For 3 days now, since he arrived, he's been swapping tales of war with that husband of mine, 50 to the dozen.
Mm-hmm.
I tell you, if they're not separated soon, it'll be me who's declaring war, and they'll be on the receiving end of my heavy artillery.
On being ushered into the drawing room, Hunter was asked to wait, and a few minutes later he found himself being confronted by his quarry, Julian Frost. The old soldier looked very well, although somewhat flushed and more than a little excited, and the agent knew without being told that he'd recently emerged from a major campaign, which had been fought not with guns of war, but with words, words that spoke louder than cannon, memories that lingered on, memories which death alone could erase.
Just answer me one question, Mr. Hunter.
Sure.
Is it wrong for a man to remember?
No, sir. Nor is it wrong to forget. It's just a question of how you go about it. I mean, it's possible to compromise between the two. There's a happy medium. And when you return home, I think you're going to find it.
They don't want me, Mr. Hunter. I'm an intruder. An intruder on the present and on the future. I have only the past to live for. And to them, the past is dead.
Well, wait a minute, sir. Let's get the facts straight. I mean, if it wasn't for the past, we'd have no present and no future either. Your son would never have been born, or his son after him. I mean, they're as aware of that fact as you are.
I wonder.
And as for not wanting you, well, I think I know better than that. But if it's assurance you're after, take it from me. They not only want you, they need you. You're as much a part of their life as they are of yours. Makes you a very fortunate guy indeed. But you've got more than most, old soldier. Don't aim your guns the wrong way.
Henry Simon returns to conclude this story in just a moment. And here again is Henry Simon.
After a good deal of persuasion, Hunter finally extracted a promise from the old soldier that he would return home by the end of the week. A promise which was duly honored, much, of course, to the relief and the joy of his family, who, needless to say, welcomed him back with open arms. He had, it transpired, left home shortly after midnight on a Thursday evening, and on discovering he'd missed the last train up to London, he'd spent the night in a waiting room at Wandsworth Station. On resumption of the service the following morning, he travelled by tube to Euston, and thence by express to Inverness. It is said that everything happens for the best, and perhaps this case was no exception to the rule. At all events, it led to a very much closer understanding between father and son, and both are no doubt the wiser because of it. And now, as always, this is Henry Simon inviting you to meet me here again, and for the present bidding you not goodbye, but simply au revoir.